Welcome back to everyone's favorite dumpster fire. Today we're talking about relic effects. More specifically, relic effects that give your starting armament a particular skill. Some of them are incredibly useful, like the Wise Miasma combo that gives you access to 2 status ailments and separate attack boosts for inflicting either ailment. But there are some caveats. Some of them already come equipped on the starting weapon of its best character. Some of them have obscure scalings like Gravitas scaling with intelligence, despite it only being available to the 4 most academically inept Nightfarers you could probably choose, and some of them can only be put on one friggin' dude. There isn't a single weapon skill here that can be accepted by all 8 characters at the very start of a run. And if you tend to have relic effects like these in your common loadouts, it doesn't take long for you to pick up on the fact that some characters just really suck balls at using weapon skills. Iron Eye starts with a bow, and therefore can only accept one of the 20 starting armament skills, which is Rain of Arrows. Revenant has a unique fist weapon with a very limited scope of skill acceptance, and the Recluse starts with only a staff and can't use weapon skills at all. So if you're using a relic like this, you'll likely be limiting yourself to a pool of 5 characters: Wilder, Guardian, Duchess, Raider, and Executor. Some of my criteria here will involve how good the skill is by itself, but I'm much more concerned with how well it builds into other character proficiencies, since this is technically a relic build video. Number 20, Quickstep. There is a massive difference of 2 total frames between this and a regular dodge, measuring in at 15 frames while a regular dodge gets 13. But I guess if anyone gives a shit about strangling some hard-earned value out of this vampire of file space, the 2 exceptions to this data are the Guardian and Duchess, which get 10 and 11 frames respectively, and the Recluse gets 15 frames on her dodge regardless, so her not being able to accept the Ash doesn't even matter. And honestly, saying the Duchess has a 10-frame dodge is just a misrepresentation because she can chain dodge for a grand total of 21 frames of invulnerability. For shit's Christ, are you even playing the game anymore? Fuck. So if I'm putting this on anyone at all, I'm probably going to be putting it on Guardian. In this instance, using Quickstep instead of his default dodge actually increases his iframes by 5 in exchange for later recovery frames. The problem with this is that the Guardian doesn't get Quickstep on his shield. No, that shit gets slapped on the fucking halberd. Why does it get equipped to the one armament I'm more likely to replace? His passive multiplies his guarding ability by 5, suggesting I should absolutely be spending time looking for a better shield as well, because that's the main beneficiary of his passive. Something I would be fine with admitting makes sense if the starting halberd wasn't begging to be replaced. And it's not like the Guardian's dodge is bad, I mean it's pretty fucking bad, but it also has quicker recovery frames than a regular dodge, allowing you to do fancy shit like 2-stepping through Estelle's Wave of Darkness attack in Noclateo, something only he and the Duchess are capable of doing. If you're thinking about equipping Quickstep on your starting armament and you're not playing Guardian, then boy do I have wonderful news for your dense ass. Just grab a boss reward that gives you improved dodging, giving you an additional 3 frames of invulnerability on regular dodges. You now have a regular dodge that is, at worst, 1 frame better than Quickstep, has the same recovery frames, and doesn't cost FP. Now stop using this. Number 19, White Shadow's Lure. You find humanoid bitches in bulk when you're raiding encampments on the first day, so any effort driven towards compiling an exhaustive list of what the game considers humanoid feels completely squandered when I could just take an easier, more direct approach to selling you on this Ash by pointing at the description and waiting for you to read it. This effect works on enemies regardless of their combat state. And here's the hilarious part, it still sucks. White Shadow's Lure has grabbed life by the balls and descended beyond anything else it's ever been before. It has clawed and gnashed its way out of the crevices of the deepest bedrock of Earth like Kratos climbing out of Hades in God of War 2. And it's managed to climb one single tier above its peers, to a slightly elevated, slightly more lustrous piece of bedrock. It would fucking kill you guys to actually just make this good. I found a very niche but kind of strong use for this Ash on Duchess when it's paired with her relic effect that ups her attack power during an ultimate when she kills shit. Because even though it doesn't work against a lot, it's kinda okay at rounding up hordes of dipshits that take too much time to kill when spread apart. But White Shadow's Lure doesn't even work against basic encampment bosses. The fucking fire monk chilling out underground in the mausoleums don't even give it a second glance, but the basic ones in the crater fall for that shit like a carrot on a stick. And the 2 prelates in the crater that preface the prelate boss encounter also get fooled by it. The only character who would actually use this would be Revenant to get some of the heat off of her in a scramble, and it's literally what her claws come straight out of the box with. So who the fuck cares? Number 18, Storm Stomp. This armament skill seems to have a constant unflinching damage value of around 26 to 28, no matter who's using it. It takes exactly 3 stomps to stance break little dudes like marionettes and soldiers, and the damage you're doing with it isn't too important because you should be using it for the hyper armor, the staggering of smaller enemies, and I think most importantly, what it can true combo into if you're playing against other scrubs like yourself. But let's actually get to the reason why I started cackling like a maniac at the start of this paragraph. I was so sure of myself calling this Ashe the worst in the game. I was so confident in this decision that I got all the way to making the fucking assets for the goddamn video before I ever thought to question it. And then Everdark Libra slams his hairy goat ass into the servers and forces me to remember why so many people love this Ashe in the base game. This bitch exterminates NPC invaders. And if you can find a relic effect that also gives you the attack boost upon defeating night invaders, like the ones in the condemned encampments, you know, the ones that smack like a two-tone filter on the screen when you get to it, then you are getting a 7% attack power per NPC killed. And the reason why no one cares about it, and why the Everjail meta is still way stronger than this, is because there are so many map patterns that just don't even give you the event. So you'll start into a run and immediately look at the map and just be like, fuck. Well, wasted that relic. Well, at least I picked Everdark Libra, so I'll have tons of night fuckers to chew on to boost up my— except it doesn't give you the boost for killing NPCs during the Libra fight either. Awesome. Alright, well, the one thing it's good at, and it's not even that important during the day, nor the Everdark Libra fight, so congratulations. Understandable, sir. Have a great day. If you need me, I'll be in my bedroom fucking myself. Number 17, Endure. Endure is in a regrettable spot here because the skill by itself is probably like top 3 on a good raider build that feeds into things like damage mitigation, rally healing, and face tanking damage to give even more of it back. If you build around it with the right relic effects, you can even use Endure as a sort of pseudo retaliate while the actual retaliate is on cooldown. But because I'm not particularly giving details about the skill and instead telling you about the relic effect that gives you the skill, most of the utilities I'll be able to come up with that are raider centric will eventually have to face the music that raider already comes with Endure on his starting weapon to begin with. Guardian can find it somewhat useful since his great shield doesn't have a skill by default, and so you can have the shield out and still be able to reach Endure with a single button press. And that can be coupled with another Guardian staple, the effect that redirects enemy aggro to you when guarding. But it's honestly hard to make Endure work with a character like Guardian though, since his signature playstyle revolves around, you know, the big fucking cookie sheet in his left hand, taking advantage of things like Steel Guard and using relic effects like stamina recovery on successful attacks, and blocking attacks reflect a portion of damage. That being said though, stamina recovery on successful attacks can also be pretty useful on Raider because his best weapons require these massive portions of stamina to attack with, and if you're attacking with a very small amount of stamina, that's just gonna mean waiting even longer for the stamina regen to kick in, and having even 2 stamina given to you as you land an attack completely nullifies that wait time. Number 16, Determination. The only thing I'm determined to do right now is find a relic build that'll actually help me win the fucking game. Despite the width of characters this can be given to, I'm only really interested in giving this to either Guardian or Raider, and I would only give this to Guardian to elevate the damage floor of his starting weapon that's currently chilling out somewhere in the Dead Sea. And once I raid a single camp and find any other halberd I can use, this shit and the relic that gave it to me are being launched into the recycling bin with schizophrenic aggression. Guardians can't charge up their guard counters with it because it, once again, comprises multiple instances of damage. Raiders hate it because the two-handed charged heavy comprises 2 separate swings, and Wilders can't use it with his unique follow-up because the flame buff that comes afterwards is also considered a weapon buff and overwrites Determination before the attack lands. Determination fits into a specific playstyle that involves lots of jumping and lots of hoping you're given a build that includes buffs related to jumping. That's not to say it doesn't have its own little applications here and there, and I've noticed this Ashe fits pretty decently into a Wilder build. He can still use charged R2s, and most of his critical attacks still seem to deal a majority of its damage in the first instance. But that would also have to mean ignoring his unique relic effect that gives him his signature follow-up attack, and that's way too good for me to ever recommend foregoing if you have the option to equip it. Number 15, Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt opens up a curious case regarding the animation speed of certain skills just feeling slower, even despite all the animation keyframes being the exact same in Nightreign. But because you have to take Nightreign at a more urgent pace, your own head just makes it feel sluggish. Thunderbolt still already has an agonizingly long wind-up time at around 1.2 seconds, but the follow-up cast isn't even allowed to start until almost 2 seconds into the initial animation, forcing the chain cast to measure in at a remarkably shameful 2.6 6. Insanely slow for a chain castable armament skill, but it's not something you notice unless you compare all the wind-up and recovery times of all the different starting skills like I did. Even though none of the data has changed here, Thunderbolt still has an exasperatingly long recovery time until you're allowed to cast the second bolt. You can cast 3 Blood Blades before you can cast 2 Thunderbolts, and I'm just gonna be honest, the damage when you're starting an Expedition feels like flicking rubber bands at bitches. It is unexpectedly flexible for an armament skill, considering it can be placed on 5 of the 8 Nightfarers, and I was very surprised when I saw I could actually put this on the Revenant starting fists, only to find out she has one of the worst damage of all the characters that can use it. Thunderbolt needs 10 FP per cast, and the chain cast ability is obviously gonna lend itself to spamming tactics, but the one character with the FP reserves to actually use this with some degree of sustainability gets bottlenecked by its deck scaling. And even if it didn't have that problem, it still has to compete with Wraith Calling Bell, which is arguably the Revenant's best starting item. I'm only ever taking it into 2 of the 7 Nightlord fights, one of which ends up being a gimmick fight in its Everdark phase, and the other can be flinched out of his attack with a charged R2 from anything more imposing than a thumbtack, because that's honestly the only reason I would personally use this. I'm not chasing after that fat, juicy DOT Fulgor gets when he's hit with lightning. I'm hitting him with lightning because he about to slap my ass with some shit that I really just don't want to deal with. It borrows the interaction from base Elden Ring involving enemies in water taking more damage, but that damage increase is only 10%, and I'd rather that damage come from a weapon passive or a talisman or a relic or anything that isn't the fucking weather. Number 14, Gravitas. Wow, I can't believe I'm about to start beef with 2 balancing teams in a row now. Hey, Nightreign, why the fuck does this scale with intelligence? I'm gonna throw this on Wilder for a minute here so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is the default damage of Gravitas at level 15 with the starting sword and completely unadjusted scaling. Now I'm gonna do some rusty patented fuckering with the params and give it an ID that favors strength instead. Fuck you. This actually could have went pretty hard on Recluse, but she only has a staff and can't even accept responsibility for her own child, let alone a fucking starting skill. No, let's just scale that bitch with intelligence and then give it to 4 of the most galactically dense life forms to ever pass the Round Table's recruitment process. What the fuck? The damage up front always seems to just barely get rid of groups and leave them all at a sliver of health, but clearing large groups and throwing away large amounts of community litter at once is what it's good at, and on the very first couple of encampments where you're level 1, killing groups is just the easiest way to level up, and as soon as it gets to the point where you need to start dropping bosses with it, you should probably stop using it. If you're using it on Raider, it can pair nicely with any restoration on kill effects you also have on him, like the ones that restores HP when his totem is active. Placing this on Guardian and pairing it up with his increased skill duration effect essentially designates him as the team's very own zoning committee, giving him access to 2 easy AoE attacks that'll be playing the game for him up to a certain point. Number 13, Poison Moth Flight. I'm not confident in saying it's that good in the context of Nightreign, but it is definitely underrated. Whether or not this is actually worth depends on the rest of your build. Thankfully, the Wise Relic already imbues your starting armament with poison in addition to an attack bonus when poison or rot happens in your vicinity. It's also a guaranteed relic, which means if you do roll something that has Poison Moth Flight on it, you're at least going to have a pretty decent build with it right from the jump. I think most of you guys already know the gimmick behind this one. I'm not going to explain in too much detail how it works, but it basically just takes all the poison damage a target will have taken over time and just detonates it in one big PP-ass burst of big green damage. It also deals some poison by itself, but you're definitely better off using the skill to proc the poison detonation instead of the poison status. Doing the latter can still absolutely be done, but it wastes way too much FP and squanders one of the greatest advantages of this skill, which is its low FP cost. You still inflict 35 poison buildup as a base just by having the effect that imbues your starting weapon with it, and I think that's a pretty necessary effect to have on if you're heading out with this skill. Once again, only available to Duchess and Executor, and I think it's pretty obvious at that point who would reap more benefits from it, but this isn't even my number 1 status skill choice for Executor, because I think there's a much more powerful relic combination available to him that I haven't got around to explaining yet. I will when we get to it, but right now I think I'm good with wrapping this one up by just reminding you that it's a skill and walking my ass home. Number 12, Lightning Slash. I mean, it's fine. I think a huge reason why it feels better to use in Nightreign is because it can actually synergize with relics that boost affinity damage like Knight of the Lord. You can stack it up with a bunch of lightning attack power +2s, and the lightning bolt gets the full benefit of those stacks since it's just lightning damage and not anything else. Maybe roll that into taking attacks boost attack power or something, and you can really start taking some chunks off a motherfucker. Affinity damage actually goes a long way when you're first starting a run because the extra lightning damage is the same on level 1 that it is on 15. Like, it's just a flat value. Which is why, once again, it is some real king shit on Duchess because her alternate dagger moveset allows her to get so much more continuous damage out of the buff. It's straightforward enough for me to recommend it only if you have absolutely just no idea what else you want to have on your relics, and having a lot of different weapon passives that feed into it means you'll pretty much always have 1 or 2 passives helping it out. Well, hopefully. The game might also hate you and want you to die, so that might also be a possibility. Number 11, Glintblade Phalanx. Why does the cast take more FP than the follow-up stat? I mean, I guess it makes sense casting would take more, but like, I'm using this shit for the follow-up attack. I don't care about the fucking Virgil swords above my head. Like, can I just have that on an Ashe? Like, can you split up the animation and just give me the follow-up, like, as its own? Or just fucking just give us Piercing Fang to start with? No? Well, fuck you, I'm not using it then. I'm not spending 10 FP to cast Glint Blades and then accidentally overwrite them because I switched to something I forgot already had Glint Blades on it as a passive. The stance damage is still massive, just like in regular Elden Ring, but as far as characters that can accept it as a starting Ashe, only the Guardian starts with the weapon that could actually use stance damage as a benefit. And Wilder, I guess. But Wilder has an entire ultimate dedicated to that. He don't need that shit. The Glint Blades themselves also get a slight scaling bonus from intelligence, so when giving this to Duchess, the Glint Blades will do more damage than if it was used by a Guardian, but the follow-up stab won't do nearly as much since it only scales directly off the weapon's own motion values. This is really only good on the Wilder since the follow-up R2 attached to the skill is so great for stance breaking. A greatsword can dole out slightly more poise damage than a halberd, putting Wilder in just barely a better spot to receive this than the Guardian. It's a shame his FP pool isn't deep enough to consistently have it ready to go when he needs it. All because you gotta summon the fucking Virgil swords first. Pretty damn good for revives though. Number 10, Rain of Arrows. Rain of Arrows cannot be found on any of Iron Eye's guaranteed or remembrance relics, so you're gonna have to pull out the Merc wallet and start fishing for jackpots on this bitch if you actually want to build around it. Rain of Arrows as an armament skill is also incredibly hit and miss, literally, because the size and activity of your desired target matters way too much for me to be able to consistently recommend it. But then like, what the fuck else am I gonna recommend in its place? Rain of Arrows is an Iron Eye exclusive. He's the only one who takes it because he's the only one who starts with a bow. And it's the only bow-compatible starting skill, so you might as well just throw it on if you have it because this tux was tailored specifically for your fat ass. I think the best strategy for this when building around it is just knowing what Iron Eye by himself is good with first. His Arcane isn't bad, for example, so you can pair it up with an imbuement effect that gives him a status on his starting bow, and just have fun blasting down modern garage-sized enemies and other shit you absolutely should not be able to kill at level 1. Even without status builds, you can detonate Iron Eye's marks on decently large enemies tremendously quickly with one well-timed use of the skill. I just wish it used less than 20 FP. It's competing with Prayerful Strike for first place for most expensive starting skill, and its only recipient is a character who's tied with Raider and Guardian for least amount of starting FP. And also, before anyone calls me out for it, no, FP restoration on bow attacks does not work since Rain of Arrows is technically one attack with an emitter attached to it. So using Rain of Arrows will only restore one single FP, no matter how many arrows actually hit the target. It's good on Iron Eye because it's the only one given to Iron Eye, and I don't know how I feel about my only other option going this out of its way to be unsustainable. Number 9 and 8, Chilling Mist and Poisonous Mist. Loading out with a relic effect that gives your starting armament a status allows you to play way more comfortably with not just status builds, but builds that inflict multiple status ailments and empower your character when status afflictions take place. This is why Wise and Miasma bounce so well off of each other because the armament skill effect does not overwrite imbuement effects, so if you have starting armament does poison and starting skill is Chilling Mist, you will be inflicting two separate status statuses, and you will get a separate, stackable attack boost for both ailments. Having a status imbuement effect on your starting armament inflicts 35 status, only 25 if you're using bleed, but that can be stacked with the Executor Katana's innate bleed, and I would much rather go for frost and poison anyways, just because the Executor already has bleed pretty much covered regardless of what you go with. And hooking his ass up with the Wise Miasma combo meal gives you the game's only triple status build that is completely unaffected by RNG because you can just start with it. The Duchess can also take advantage of skills like these because she has some pretty decent synergy with Frostbite concealing your character, which then allows her to very easily hunt for critical attacks. But that same synergy isn't really there for poison or bleed, and if given the choice between giving this to Executor versus Duchess, then I just feel like that's a question you don't really need to ask. Duchess is good at getting crits, and she can do that optimally when she's using Frostbite as an enabler to get those crits, like she can with the Miasma relics, but that's really just about as far as you can go with status Duchess. It is underrated, don't get me wrong, but it's not at all optimal. Even though they're both functionally the same weapon skill, Chilling Mist gets additional scaling with Dexterity and Intelligence, meaning this could have been a slam dunk snap pick for Duchess mains, except Hoarfrost Stomp needs 4 less FP and scales with the same 2 stats, eclipsing and nothingizing every single advantage she would have gotten from it like a Microsoft business acquisition. Number 7, Sacred Blade. Man, this shit's just way too much FP to be 40 seconds, and I hate how attached I've become to it, born from an averse disdain I have for Deathrite birds in this game that's gotten so unhealthily out of hand that it's turned into a physical detriment. Fuck, and I cannot stress this enough, this bitch. I can't wait until community knowledge gets to the point where we start memorizing which motherfuckers are hiding out in which Everjails on each map pattern, because it's eventually gonna get there, and we're gonna have to come up with an in-game signal to let people know they're about to open up a Deathbird jail at the very start of a run. I don't know what the fuck that signal is gonna look like, and if you have Sacred Blade as your starting skill, you won't know what it is either, because you're not going to give a shit. Sacred Blade in Nightreign only clocks in at 35 flat damage versus Elden Ring's 90, but the double damage against Deathbirds and skeleton enemies are very much unchanged. So if you just feel like never being harassed by Mariners, Birds of the Night, or anything with visible femurs, lace this bitch on and have fun not looking back. It doesn't really matter that much who has this, but I would advise not giving it to the Duchess, because this is not the skill that gives all of your damage the anti-undead effect. That would be Sacred Order, not Sacred Blade. So caster types aren't really going to get as much out of it as a melee combatant. Then again, I already told you Duchess usually benefits the most from flat affinity buffs because of her quick attack speed, so I mean honestly, if I pop an Everjail and Zombie Tweety is staring my ass down, I'll just be glad if one of us has it on, so just give it to whoever, who the fuck cares. Number 6, Eruption. It's good upfront damage, it's fire damage, it comes with its own hyper armor, but no benefit this starting skill gives you will ever be able to match this single foundational advantage that I'm about to tell you it does right now. I've smacked many a raider back into combat with a Blasphemous Blade, I've thrown stones at 3-bar hose with reckless conviction, and I still cannot think of a single weapon skill more suited for aggressively resuscitating your assigned committee of dipshits. Everyone out here talking about tanks and supports and stat. Bitch, I'm the janitor of the team. Make all the blunders and miscalculations you want, brother. I'll just mop that shit right up. The 2-hit of the skill itself is already busting out over 200 revive damage, not even including the lingering magma constantly punching the face of your skill-deficient friend. Not only keeping the bar still if shit gets silly in the process, but doing its own serviceable revive damage over time as well. It's not that flexible, since it can only be given to Wilder and Raider, but those are probably the only 2 candidates I would have snap-picked for this skill anyway, so it's not like it bothers me too much. And unlike most other starting skills, I feel like both characters come with their own separate relic setups that help them maximize their utility with it in different ways. Stance breaking works on both characters, obviously, but you can either spec Wilder into the fire attack power to coincide with his unique follow-up, or you can spec into damage trading if you want to put it on Raider. For only being available on 2 characters, I feel like this is one of the most versatile starting skills you could ever choose, because it has completely separate build options for whoever's receiving it, and they both shred major ass in their own. What the fuck? What the hell did I just write? Shred major ass? Is this a fucking skate park? I'm keeping that in. That's stupid. Goddamn. Number 5, Bloodblade. At level 1, each burst of the skill can wallop degens with almost 3 times the attack power of a basic R1, provided the weapon hitbox also connects with the degen in question. The only 2 Nightfarers who can make use of this skill are the Duchess and the Executor, and comparing the utility this skill gives a Duchess versus an Executor at the very start of a run feels like taking what the average YouTuber has done for society and comparing it to fucking UNICEF. The Katana hitbox is longer, he does around 20 more damage per burst at level 1, builds up status twice as fast, and that's not including the innate bleed on his katana and any bleed relics you probably have attached to your Executor's build, because you're playing Executor and that's how that shit works. I'm saying all this now, but this skill is still some fine-ass gravy on Duchess, do not get it twisted. Status Duchess is already kind of overshadowed because playstyles that involve status buildup immediately get forced out of the conversation by either casting builds or crit hunting builds. Not that that's unexpected, like, those are the ways you should play her, like, I get that, but listen, throttling up skill cooldown and restaging a fat-ass Wakizashi chain to get a proc on a boss both feels and is massive, and Bloodblade having great buildup and great damage as a bonus just feeds into that playstyle so well. I'm not going to tell you how to use this on Executor. You don't need my ass for that. Executor can 2-tap proc on bitches if the katana hits the target too, so I don't really have any guidance for you outside of just don't forget the fucking L2 button exists. Don't clutch your pearls too much over HP loss because it's only percentage based. Continued spamming doesn't incur HP loss with each use, and if you can roll it in with starting armament inflicts blood loss, you will be, as the kids say, big money ballin'. Number 4, Prayerful Strike. Man, this goes so hard on Raider. Brother, Raider is the only one who can fucking use it. Of the 20 skills available on relic effects, only 2 of them are so restricted that they become exclusive to one character, and both of them involve spending a baker's fuckload of FP on someone with a tremendously unimpressive FP bar. Understanding the impact Prayerful Strike brings to a fight is like watching a crash and then buying the dip. You see the upfront damage and feel hopeful about it, then you start thinking about its shortcomings, 20 FP cost, painful recovery time, general bitterness that Guardian can't use it despite it fitting his character 10 times better, and right when you're ready to say it's trash, you find this bitch on a relic that has Raider's totem healing effect. The overall stopping power seems to have been slashed a bit on its way into Nightreign, which feels incredibly strange to say because as far as I can tell, all the motion values are the exact same. 235% attack power, 600 on the poison V. Wow, I'm gonna be honest, 180 for a revive MV is not at all what I was expecting. Like, I just feel like that shit should be way higher. Also, fuck me, where in the back shot of 87 is the relic effect that gives you increased revive power? I just learned they added a whole ass motion value in attack param just to calculate revive damage. So a relic effect that ups that shit should absolutely be in the game. The fucking hell was I talking about? Oh, but depending on what relic effects this skill is shaking hands with in your build, you can use this weapon skill to turn your Raider into something everyone already knew he was. A better Guardian. Kinda stupid that only one Nightfarer can use it to begin with. I personally would have put it on Wilder and Guardian as well, but if it could have landed on any single character, then I guess I'm just glad it was the big man himself, because some of his best relic effects synergize beautifully with what this skill is already capable of doing. Using this and the HP restoration totem buff in tandem can solve energy crises that modern scientists today are still trying to figure out. It's honestly not too good straight out of the box, and it requires a bit of maintenance, especially since Raider only starts with enough FP to use it 3 times before completely draining himself. But throw in a rally relic and maybe that effect that gives you a damage buff when you get hit, and little by little, this level 1 crook proudly evolves into a level 2900 gangster dragon bitch wizard with the right amount of care. Number 3, Seppuku. I was going into this paragraph fully expecting the Executor to be the only actual beneficiary of this weapon ash, but I had no idea how correct this assumption would end up being until I firsthand used it at the start of a run and remembered that his passive exists. This is the only armament skill in the entire lineup that afflicts you with the status, which can immediately activate the Executor's passive that gives him an attack boost after recovering from status ailments, which then stacks with the attack buff given by Seppuku. So that's 30 extra bleed buildup, 25 extra physical damage, both flat numbers, and then the tenacity passive on top of that, which ends up totaling out to around 60% more attack power if you're level 1, in addition to the extra bleed buildup on a weapon that already inflicts it innately. It's the keys to the goddamn Vanderbilt mansion on any Executor build, and it's a wheelchair and a pair of clown shoes on anyone else. Number 2, Flaming Strike. Flaming Strike is one of those absolutes that you just see and immediately know where it's going on the list. This bitch has topped so many of my videos over so many years that it has basically achieved tenure status. Fucking Duskbloods could come around and its iteration of Flaming Strike could just completely just imbibe ass, and I would still be afraid to rank it too low. I know how powerful the fire affinity is when it's powered up by the relic effects that facilitate it, but I think what a lot of players overlook is the fact that you can give yourself a decently powerful fire blast in your hands at the very start of a run for just 4 FP, 110 base fire damage, a stagger value of 2, 10 fucking poise damage, holy shit. It's basically a catch flame if someone pissed on it and then donated it to Goodwill. Like, it's obviously not going to be as good, but for 4 FP, there ain't no room for bitchin'. At level 1, the initial blast has a pretty unmovable base damage of 110 that doesn't really scale off of anything, but the follow-up scales mostly with strength, making Wilder and Guardian the 2 best candidates. And this is where, contrary to my previous statement, Rusty's been a bitch for a bit. The scaling on the follow-up gives the Duchess noticeably worse damage numbers on the cast, but since she starts with a dagger and the affinity value doesn't change based on what weapon you're using, that would mean the affinity buff is strongest on Duchess. It's still one of the goats of all time, or whatever the fucking hell. It's just a little nitpick that I have, okay? That's all. Number 1's Hoarfrost Stomp. Yeah, that's what it is. Here it is. Yeah, we're all very proud of you, Hoarfrost Stomp. Please take your fucking trophy and go home. There's getting the keys to the city, and then there's bending the city's mayor over the table. If it's not a boss, it's getting frostbitten. Those are the rules in which the Ash itself has made. The wide fanning, easily spammable cone of damage combined with its ability to proc frost with a single use, even on meteor dudes you wouldn't expect like the Redmane Knights, can stagger small to medium-sized enemies, and rounding off the list of talents with its cheapish cost of 10 FP. There isn't just one thing that makes this starting skill as powerful as it is. It's a series of cogs in a perfectly fine-tuned machine, and being able to proc Frostbite so consistently with any of the characters that can use it is the single cog in the machine that gives it the proper juice it needs to go from nuclear tier to solar flare. I just love how history repeats itself sometimes. Hoarfrost Stomp being this powerful in both Nightreign and in base Elden Ring when it first launched is the kind of prophetic bullshit that historians would have translated from the Bible. You could tell me the Book of Leviticus has a verse that predicts the social oppression in the 2nd millennium caused by the power of Hoarfrost Stomp, and I'd be like, he is totally telling the truth. This is a skill I would just always pick up if I saw it on something. And the fact that it's on a relic effect that changes your starting armament to it it's kind of just stupid. It's the kind of skill that lets you just enjoy being level 12 after killing the first night boss so you can drag your ass through day 2 with the urgency of a concrete brick. Become anointed with the Patreon link below and join my list of benefactors right now. Sponsorless early access content and in-game set pieces you see me use in videos from time to time, like this green screen and this chessboard.
How about I get a little fancier?